Right, ladies and gents, here I am in America. Very basic tools, not much to really work with apart from draw knife, heel shaves, spoke shaves and the like. We're just going to be working from a part made, it's just shoulder and toed, basically means it's been handled and you've got a toe shape and shoulder shape already cut in. Everything else is going to be done by hand. We'll see how long it takes. A lot of people use different types of draw knives. The normal handled version is probably pretty popular. I use a French draw knife with a little type of acorns on. It's just kind of what I got used to. This old Greaves has got quite a lot of character to it, but probably the biggest feature for me is the control. Just by having it in the palms, yes, it's nicer to have the normal handled type in terms of being able to pull, you get more of a grip, more of a purchase. But in using something like this, I'm quite lucky in terms of, big strong boy, but I can use my palms and the palm control just to get a little bit more accuracy. As I say, it's probably a preference thing, but works for me. Does kind of help if your bench is fixed. This one isn't, so it does have a little bit of rock and roll going on. Makes it a little tricky, but not impossible. Just means you have to sort of counter it with a little bit of your own body. My belly. Here we go. In amongst. That's the other type of draw knife. A bit more traditional. You'll be able to see from the angle. It's already kind of preset, so when you pull, you'll take a certain amount off. They are very, very good for pulling off bulk. Realistically, I think a more skilled bat maker than myself would be able to handle this and be able to be a little bit more intricate. As I say, it's a preference thing, which is why I choose to use the French. Just going to roughly mark points of what I want from this, and it's just so I know and get a rough idea of balance before we even start. I know where I want my apex, I know where I want it to have its sort of best performing area of blade. You're always going to get it roughly there and thereabouts, but you are able to control a little bit of the shift in the way that it's shaped, but importantly, how it swings. The pendulum effect for bats is kind of crucial. The shape that we're going to go for is something I've made a couple of times since I've been out here. It's quite popular, and that is a little bit of a duckbill. So it goes quite low. I've seen these on Warsop stebbings from a long, long time ago. Bats that were used by Ronnie Rani, Alex Tudor that came to me, but it's made a little bit of a comeback. Bats now will be a little bit thicker, but the shape is essentially the same. So I'm just trying to get as much bulk off as I can. I've got my little apex point here. My set middle will be about 1 inch lower, and then I have a nice little playing area, which is normally I just try and envisage about a ball. But I want to be working the wood off here, trying to take it into the handle. I will end up with a spine, but it's very difficult to sort of try and envisage or try and tell you once it's sat on the bench, but I can see what it looks like finished, and that's always the key part to it. And then it's just a case of, once we've got a basic shape cut, feel it, try and understand exactly how the back's going to be played and how it's going to be used, and then just alter. It's just minor adjustments after that. You'll notice the blade for this is always being pushed through at an angle, never straight. If you think about trying to put a knife through butter, even though if it's hot, if it goes in deep, it's just going to want to cut through. If it's at an angle, it'll work across, and then you get the filing come away, get smoother cuts. I think one of the big things to remember is that you're never going to be perfect every single time. You're always going to make an odd mistake, but you can rectify it if you don't take too much off. I'm still only 5-6 years in, and you're limited by how tired you are. I've been making bats now for about 6 hours. I wanted to fit this in before I headed back to the UK, and whilst I'm tired, and as you can see it's quite, well, very manual, I still want to be able to control what I'm doing. I don't want to make too many mistakes. Not for the fact that you'll look an arse, but you'll importantly waste a very good piece of wood. Right, that's my first set of marker points hit. I've left about 3-4 mil to play with. I try not to be too aggressive down this end. A lot of people would probably say that I fettle rather than get sort of tucked into this particular area, but as I say, it's a preference thing. It's what you're confident and comfortable working with, because as I say, you can't put the wood back in. Tools used from this point onwards. Talk about spoke shaves and heel shaves. That's my heel shave. I think these were Snell and Atherton originally used for leather and heels, as in cobblers, and normal spoke shave. Just a flat bottom, very sharp. That's probably the key to it, and it's been a bit of a challenge trying to find good lap files here, but Key to doing all this really is just trying to keep your tools as sharp as you can do. This point really, as I say, I've hit my little nodes that I've penned in, and I just want a little bit of shape now. The straight edge is great for taking the bulk off, and it's a little faster for that bottom end, and I'm a bit more comfortable using that here, because as I say, we don't have any machinery here. Everything at the moment is done by hand, apart from probably just a dual action sander. Once again, just to help get the bulk of the sanding done. It's still finished by hand, but this trusty old tool, and you'll see, very much like the draw knife, I guess it's called character. The blade on here really isn't straight, and it's the same as the blade in here. It's got a huge amount of character. It might not suit everyone, but it works very, very well for me, not only with the knife, but also the heel shave. You get to understand and feel each little part of it. So if you want to get tight into shoulders, you'll use a particular part. If you want to get a little bit more bulk, even with the subtle shave, you can do just by rotating it around and just using a little bit more of the blade. Get tucked into there, we've got a knot just in there. It's not uncommon. You'll find with a lot of bats, I even spoke about it recently on Instagram. Some people cover them up, especially when they're up in and around the splice. You'll find that a lot of companies, larger stickers, a little bit more concealment, doesn't really affect anything. It's not great if you've got a huge amount of filler in there as well, because vibration will and does bring it back out. But it is, once again, it's just you know, 9 times out of 10 it's just a cosmetic. But this one we're going to have to go a little deeper, which we'll use a round bottom plane, because I'm going to try and take a little of this bulk out just to get the weight down. Just working in about 15mm from the edge, because I can map that by eye, but just by putting this tiny little channel in, we're going to be stripping out a couple of ounces as we go, not just from the cuts, but by the time it's levelled off and sanded, there's quite an amount across the whole of the cleft. I'm going to drop my toe down, and this is a little bit scratchy, not the best way of going about it. You should use the knife a little bit more, but where I want the duck, which is that little bit of a fall off, I just want to cheat, and I want to take these little pieces. If I just took straight away from the wood and come down with a knife, I've got these little kidney areas, and what I want to do is I want to thin those out, and I'll use the round bottom plane and the heel shave just to take a little bit more out. It will still look flat to the eye, but we're just changing. We're talking, you know, 1/16 of an ounce, but when that 1/16 of an ounce is that end of the bat, it makes a big, big difference. Because I'm sure we all get hung up about that weight, where priority number one really is balance. There's no point having a £2.8 bat if it feels like a dead weight, whereas if it's a 210 bat, correctly balanced, feel good, feel very, very good. trying to be careful around this knot. There's still a little bit left in. I'll show you towards the tail end. I'll take the blade out of the knife, out of the vise. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to encourage this to pop out. There's just a little bit in there. It looks like it's going to be fairly safe. But I don't want to cause any more damage by ragging into it with just muscle. You'll probably hear about things like rip out. Got a little bit there. Each cleft, each back has a bit of a crown, much like your hair, where it wants to go in one way or another. They're not always the same. Every bat is slightly different. You get used to it and you get stuck in. This is why we don't take too much to begin with, because it's going to happen. You're going to find it. And this particular bat, like most, it's normally around this probably 7 to 8 inch area. You get all sorts though. This week especially, we've had one that wants to go down from this point and then go up yet the other side of the bat. Probably another 8 inches down, will only go down from there, then wants to go up. That's what you get for working with a product of nature. It's just, and you'll probably hear it from a number of people really, when you're working with certain types of wood, certain bats, the bat is pretty much telling you what it wants to be. You can't really force it to be anything else. No, not everyone's going to believe in that, because it's a money-making business and you need to make as many different types of bats out of as many pieces of wood as you have available. But if you've been afforded the time and someone wants a custom-made bat, then it's about trying to select the right piece of wood. I'll show you this knot in a second, and you'll be able to see just another piece of nature getting in the way, dictating really, because as you're cutting through normal willow, it is immensely soft. It comes off very, very easily, especially for the finer pieces. You'll see that we're getting decent long 8-9 inch strands each time. If we take a little bit more care, we can get them the full run, which is, I think, for a few of us, quite satisfying, trying to get even curls and cuts. But things like the knot will get in the way, cause a bit of a judder, and you're hitting something hard as well, so you're losing that hand control, because it's like having a speed bump and you're trying to drive as smoothly as possible. You'll hit that speed bump. There's not a great deal you can do. You just have to work around it. Ducking in the toe now. Just want a little bit of a rise and fall, that's all. We're keeping the toe still fairly thick because we don't want a weak toe. These pieces of wood have come from the UK, already pressed and handled, so I don't really have a say in there, and I haven't been able to apply the pressure I'd want at particular areas if we're going to make slightly different shapes to what we normally produce. Each shape is done slightly differently, not by much, but like with most bats, everything's got its own characteristic, and we need to try and accommodate that. Knot on one side is going to affect the opposite, so whilst we've had to remove a little bit more weight from here just to sand a lot of this as well, because otherwise it's going to be quite aggressive as we go across with the blade. I'm quite light in the way that I press on here because I want it to skip. If it's catching something, it's raised. If it does skip over, then I know with that hand as a guide, I've got the rough height that I want, and I'm not trying to tear lots of material out. I want the blade to follow the nodes that I've set, so I can dictate the shape for this final stage. We've got a rough outline now. See low, middle, duck toe, but you'll also see this little area here. It's at the end of these stages, but it is a lot tougher. It's a lot harder to work with. By all means, it's not the worst thing you're going to encounter. There's all sorts. I've even found bugs buried inside. They died for the cause. But the next job really is we'll do a little fennel. I like to put a little bit of a sand on just so I can see something that's uneven. I don't have drums here, so a lot of it's going to be done by eye. A drum sander with a cushion is a little bit more even. It gives you a greater control for the sand, the final sand as well. But in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to leave it roughly like it is at the moment, and then we're just going to give it about an 80 or 100 sand, and you'll be able to see by eye the high spots and low spots, and then file the shoulders in. Different ways of doing it. I'm actually just going to use a hand file rather than a drum, and just cut the splice down, shape the handle, and we're almost there. If you see me work at home, I've got a slightly different bench for this. I like to work in a corner and virtually work two halves of the bat at the same time, opposite times. Using someone else's bench at a different height, it's part of the gig. You know, been lucky enough to go sort of here, there, and everywhere really and make bats for people, but you have to accommodate how other people do it at their particular place, and it's my job really just to sort of fit in. Nothing special about this, it is just straightforward file. This is just purely about what's comfortable for you and what you believe is a sensible handle shape for people. But actually stripping off, I'll just show you quickly, it's just purely hard work. That's all it is. A lot of this is, it's labour intensive, it's very manual. There are no shortcuts really. If you want to get it right, just spend the time, not rush like I'm doing now. But just envisage what you want to see as an end result and just work to it. If it takes you twice as long, then so be it. You can't put the wood back. Cutting in the ears, which are the two parts of the blade which go in and hold the handle. Just cutting in, leaving a little bit of a rough edge as well. It just helps when you get to the final bind. You're right down at the bottom of the shoulders. You can take the binding down a little bit lower. Just gives it something to hold on to. Helps you keep everything nice and tight. It's not going to be the most pleasant bit, but time for a little bit. stop halfway through, give you an idea of what we're trying to achieve. It depends on how well you can see this. This is just the side that's had the knife work. We're trying to make it, even when we're using the knife, we're trying to make it as smooth as we can do without going too OTT, because as I say, I haven't got drum sanders here. But the point of using this 80 grit to begin with is this just gives me a good indication of whether I've got any high spots or low spots that I need to work out. So far it's not too bad. Obviously still have this little area to address, which is going to run from here. It's behind the face, so that's not a huge issue. But so far, touch wood, it's not too bad. A lot of this work over time has gone from everything templated, which I still use, have to, especially for different shapes and new shapes that I may not have made before, but you can kind of trust your eye now. And I think coming from a designer's background, that's always helped, being able to look at something and weigh up the aesthetic, understand balance, even as a visual process, probably actually more so than a physical one. When you're looking at something, I can see how it's going to play, I can feel how it's going to work. Instinct, I guess. It's translated quite well. I've been very fortunate that people have always spoken highly about the balance of the bats, more so the people that come to the garage and actually sit and work with us. I think it helps that you're able to see the person, understand the person, and as some of you will know, that if you've bought one of the bats from us, that we spend an awful lot of time trying to talk through how you play. There's a myriad of 6 foot left-handed batsmen that bat in the opening spots. Everyone's going to be slightly different. You'll have a certain style. You'll either be a Graham Smith or a Gower, but it's the little details which kind of help. Pretty much from here that we just want to check the overall shape, how symmetrical it all is. At the moment it's not too bad. It still needs a little bit of fettling, mainly around the toe on this right hand side, which has been a little bit neglected. Other than that, just this little patch here, and then just take a little bit more through from this part here and off the top of the spine, just to get a little bit more of a flowing shape. Otherwise it's just a little bit too straight lined and a bit boring. people get caught up early on in the straightness of the spine, and whilst it is important to show you sort of hand control and the fact that you are trying to make a pretty symmetrical blade, you can leave a lot of it to the last minute. It's only really this first part here, making sure we're pretty much dead centre. The actual wobble, we'll all get that to a point, but it's right at the last stage of sanding. You can be quite accurate and ensure that you've got a nice peak running all the way through the length of the spine. Other questions we get asked about sanding papers. Really the final sand is one of the most important ones. I have no idea what this stuff is. This is just what's been waiting for me since I've arrived in the US. I am very, very fussy though, and I knew I was going to be using dual action. I use a Smith and Arrow pad for final sand. Once we've used the DA as well, it will be done by hand. Going round and round in circles isn't the best way to obtain a good finish. There are cheats, but if you want the very, very best of finishes, then you do it by hand. Because we don't have drums, all we're going to be doing is just coming down the grits. So we start with an 80, this is just a 120, it will show up a few more little lumps and bumps. The good thing about the 120 is it's still coarse enough that you can just apply a little bit of pressure and just smooth those out. Once again, it's just done by eye. Move on to the side, but we're going to work down 4 lots of grits because, as I say, without drums and being able to go over nice with a smooth, decent amount of surface area as well as pressure, it's just labour intensive. We have to do every stage all the way down just to make sure there are no imperfections, and we try and get it as smooth a finish as possible. It's a simplistic shape, but we're now getting there. you work further and further down the grips as well, you'll see that the spine naturally starts to form depending on how even you are with your pressure either left and right of the blade. It's a case now of cleaning up the face after taking the rest of the handle part out. Sides, you can leave the sides each time to last, because as you're turning over the face and you're also cutting into the sides, by applying a smooth surface, abrasive surface, sorry, no such thing, a sanding surface to the outside, you just neaten up. So if you've got something that's got a little bit of wobble and it's running down the edge, you can just straighten it up by just applying the sanding surface to the right hand side. Also use the dual action sander just to work in the shoulders. We've got a basic cut in here which we've used with the file. We just push across the blade, but we just use the outside of the sanding disc now to flick across and just give these a little bit neater finish. So after 120, we come down again, this time onto 220, and this will really be the point of where we see any imperfections that need attention. If we've done a fairly good job the first time round, I'm not expecting we have kind of rushed through this a little bit, then we should be home and hosed, because the next couple of sanding points really are just fairly clean. You just cut over the top with what we'll be using is probably a 320 and probably a 400, but the 400 will be finished by hand. There we have our cricket bat. There are a few things that we will still do. We're going to bind by hand, we're going to finish with a final sand, but you don't want to sit and watch me for the next half an hour mess around with sanding papers. Essentially, once we're up to that sort of 400 stage, we use a 320 there. We want to go across. We want to make sure that we haven't got lots of rotations, lots of swirls within the wood, because we want to get this now as clean and as smooth and as directional as possible. The other bits and pieces which you may want to know, the reason why we keep everything kicking around is that old DA discs or old bits of sanding paper you can cut into little strips, so that when you come to do the shoulders, you've got something of which, once in a vise, is a little easier, just to make sure that these top areas, these top surfaces are smooth. Sand your handle in, get the shape that you want, make sure that you've got everything as symmetrical as possible, make sure the toe's nice and flat and worked out, but other than that, in a short space of time, that's how you shape a cricket bat.